Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take your stack of sources, the articles, the research, all of it, and turn it into immediate, actionable knowledge for you.
And today, we're looking at something you might not even realize is happening. We're living through this incredible global infrastructure race.
Absolutely. The push toward electrification, it's unprecedented.
Exactly. And every single electric vehicle, every battery farm, it all relies on a handful of critical materials.
Yeah.
And lithium is, king.
But the story of who supplies that lithium isn't just about some high-tech startup.
No, not at all. It's about these massive specialty chemical giants that have sort of morphed into the gatekeepers of this whole energy transition.
Which brings us to our focus today, Albemarle Corporation. For you, the listener, this is a huge company. It's in the S&P 500. It's a Fortune 412 company.
Right. And they pulled in $5.38 billion in revenue in 2024. But here's the kicker. As of April 2025, they're also the fourth highest grossing producer of lithium in the entire world.
That's the duality we're exploring. So our mission today is pretty clear. We're going to unpack the sources you gave us to really detail Albemarle's huge operations.
And we have to analyze the financial reality of that.
Yeah.
That strategic pivot they've made. And most critically, we need to explore the complex environmental and ethical conflicts that are popping up everywhere.
Yeah, especially at their lithium extraction sites all around the globe.
We're basically moving from the stable world of industrial chemicals into the wild west of critical minerals.
This isn't just a big player. They are a foundational pillar of the future energy economy. It's fascinating. They have these massive stakes in the conventional fossil fuel world, while at the very same time, they're leading the charge in the energy transition.
And that tension, that exact dual identity, is absolutely central to understanding both their power and, their risk.
Okay, let's unpack this then. How did a specialty chemical company, one that's rooted in industrial refining, manage to become one of the planet's primary lithium engines? And what are the trade-offs those decisions impose globally?
To really get modern Albemarle, we have to start with the foundation, the stable, profitable company it was built on.
Before the lithium craze.
Exactly. Before it was the biggest name in batteries, Albemarle was, and it still is, a massive, diversified specialty chemical company. If we don't look past the lithium division for a minute, we miss the entire safety net.
Right. That's where the real stability of their balance sheet comes from, especially with how volatile the minerals market is.
It is.
Our sources show this incredibly diverse portfolio, products that are critical for, everything from fire safety to these advanced industrial catalysts. I think we have to start with bromine.
Yes, bromine and its derivatives are huge for them. They're just crucial for products like flame retardants.
Which are in everything.
Everything. Modern electronics, construction materials, safety equipment, and the scale of this operation it's just staggering. Their production footprint for bromine chemicals spans the U.S., China, Europe, the Middle East. It solidified them as a legacy industrial power long before lithium was their main focus.
And it's not just fire safety, right? They also produce a line of antioxidants and specialty blends.
That's right. And those products improve the storage life and stability of fuels and lubricants.
So think about the stability you need in massive transport ships or heavy industrial machinery.
They're providing the fine chemicals that keep that whole conventional energy infrastructure from degrading. That detail ties them so deeply to the petrochemical sector.
And that petrochemical connection gets even stronger when you look at their catalyst business.
It does. This is where Albemarle really shifts from just specialty chemicals to, fundamental global infrastructure. They're one of the largest producers of these specialized catalysts.
And these are the backbone of the global refining industry.
They absolutely are.
Let's slow down on those catalysts for a second, because they're a crucial technical detail that explains a huge chunk of the revenue stability. We're talking about hydroprocessing catalysts, HPC, and fluid catalytic cracking, or FCC catalysts.
And these are not trivial products. They are mission critical.
Yeah.
HPC and FCC catalysts are absolutely essential for petroleum refining. They allow refiners to break down heavy, lower quality crude oils into valuable products.
Like premium gasoline and clean diesel.
Exactly. Without these catalysts, a huge amount of the world's crude oil would be basically unusable, or at least economically unviable to refine.
So Albemarle isn't just selling a product, they're selling the fundamental technology that keeps global transport running.
That's a perfect way to put it. And their major production sites, Bayport, Texas, and Amsterdam, Netherlands, plus these joint ventures in Brazil and Japan, They all work to ensure they maintain this global dominance.
And that market share translates directly into reliable, high-margin revenue.
Correct. And we also see them producing aluminum oxides. Those are used in, well, everything from flame retardant applications to polishing compounds, niche ceramics, and again, other catalysts.
There's also magnesium hydroxide, another flame retardant.
Right. So when you step back and you look at the whole list, refining catalysts, specialty metal oxides, fine chemicals, you realize this is a deeply integrated conglomerate that's just underpinning global manufacturing.
Which brings us back to that financial reality check. And it's a really striking contrast, isn't it, between that foundational stability and their current market exposure.
It's fascinating. The sheer difference between their necessary global role and their bottom line in 2024. So they reported a robust $5.38 billion in revenue.
Okay, pretty strong.
But at the same time, the company reported an operating income of negative $1.2 billion.
Wait, negative?
Negative. And a net income loss of negative $1.2 billion, all in that same year.
Hold on. How is an S&P 500 company that's leading the green revolution recording nearly $3 billion in negative operating and net income? Is this sustainable? Or is the market just accepting massive short-term pain for long-term gain?
Definitely the latter, and that's the duality we talked about at the start. The losses, they strongly indicate the enormous capital expenditure, the CapEx required to rapidly scale up these lithium operations globally.
And lithium prices have been all over the place.
Exactly. Coupled with the inherent volatility of lithium prices over the past, say, 18 months, they are spending aggressively to secure future market share. And that steady, reliable cash flow from the specialty chemical and catalyst divisions,
That's the backbone.
that's the financial backbone. It's underwriting these massive, risky nine-figure bets they're placing on lithium expansion. Without that traditional chemical stability, they just couldn't afford the losses or this aggressive global strategy.
So that growth trajectory, it wasn't a slow walk. It was a series of massive strategic leaps.
For sure. Albemarle was formed back in February 1994. It came out of a corporate spin-off of the chemical businesses of the older Albemarle Corporation.
And their history since then is just a masterclass in growth through targeted M&A.
Oh, absolutely. They didn't wait long.
Yeah.
In their first year, they acquired the Asano Corporation in Japan. The late 90s brought custom manufacturing plants, joint ventures in places like Jordan.
And the early 2000s?
The early 2000s saw them just absorb these specialized businesses. The flame retardant division of Ferro Corporation, custom and fine chemicals from ChemFirst, and various other lines from their old parent company, Ethel and Rhodia.
This early phase seems to be about diversification and just cementing their position as the specialty chemical giant.
It was. You can even see their headquarters shifts, right?
Yeah.
Moving from Richmond, Virginia, then to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, before settling in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2015. It reflects a growing ambition.
But the truly tectonic shifts, the ones that really prepared the company for its current identity, came in two massive acquisitions.
The first one was in July 2004. That's when Albemarle acquired the entire refinery catalysts platform from AkzoNobel.
That's a key move. Acquiring a platform like that isn't just buying a factory.
No.
You're buying market share, intellectual property, critical geographic positioning. They paid, what was it, $615.7 million for it.
And it instantly globalized their infrastructure footprint in the refining space. It brought them production sites and joint ventures in these really critical locations: the Netherlands, Houston, France, Brazil, Japan, Singapore.
So that one move made them indispensable to the global oil industry.
And it reinforced that stable cash flow we just talked about.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. This is where the lithium story takes off. The move that fundamentally redefined Albemarle was the massive acquisition of Rockwood Holdings in January 2015.
A staggering price tag. They paid $6.2 billion in stock.
This acquisition wasn't just strategic, it was existential for them.
It was. Rockwood was the gateway to the future. It immediately brought these high-value lithium assets into Albemarle's portfolio. And right after the acquisition, the company realigned its global business units.
Into three pillars, right. Metal surface treatment, refining solutions, and performance chemicals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just 10 months after the deal closed, they formally separated the bromine and lithium operations, which had been bundled together under performance chemicals.
And that sent a clear signal. Lithium was now critical enough to stand on its own.
It did. Which leads directly to the next high-stakes maneuver.
Yeah.
I mean, if you pay $6.2 billion to acquire a company like Rockwood, you need to optimize that investment. You need to raise capital for the next phase.
And that's exactly what they did.
It is. In December 2016, They executed this major strategic divestiture. They sold the Chemetal Surface Treatment business, one of the three pillars they just created, to BASF.
For a staggering $3.2 billion.
Yeah.
That's an incredible piece of portfolio optimization. They buy Rockwood for $6.2 billion. They carve out the lithium assets they want, and then they sell off Chemetal for $3.2 billion.
So that sale essentially becomes the dedicated funding mechanism for the aggressive lithium expansion that followed.
It's brilliant in a corporate strategy sense.
Precisely. This whole strategy, buy, carve, sell, reinvest, is the clearest evidence of their transformation. They went from this diversified chemical spin-off relying on stable industrial processes to a rapid growth, high-stakes company focused on dominating energy storage.
And we saw more evidence of that later on.
Oh, yeah. In 2017, with the acquisition of a lithium salts production asset in Asia, and then the 2019 lithium joint venture with Mineral Resources. This entire history just shows a company that is constantly restructuring and moving capital to chase the highest growth markets, even if that means embracing really high volatility.
That corporate history provides the perfect context for understanding the scale of Albemarle's ambition. So now, let's shift our entire focus to that lithium division. It's the segment that generates all the excitement, but also
All the controversy. Yeah, the environmental and ethical controversy.
Exactly.
What's so fascinating here is the sheer technical and, geographical constraint of it all.
Yeah.
The primary method of extracting lithium brine evaporation is just fundamentally in conflict with the very ecosystems where the mineral is most abundant.
So the promise of global clean energy is currently running headfirst into the reality of extreme water scarcity.
That's the paradox.
And the Salar de Atacama in Chile is ground zero for this conflict.
It really is. Chile is a lithium superpower, second highest producing country globally, right behind Australia.
And our sources show they produce roughly 49,000 metric tons per year. That figure has just exploded, right? It's up about 127% just since 2020.
An incredible jump.
Yeah.
And Albemarle is a major, major player there, extracting lithium from the brine deposits in that salt flat.
So let's detail that brine process, because the scale of resource use, it's hard to grasp.
It is. So Albemarle has to pump this lithium-rich brine from deep within the core of the Salar de Atacama. This brine is, well, it's essentially just water saturated with minerals.
And then they move it into these vast surface evaporation ponds.
Huge ponds. And it's just left there to bake under the intense desert sun. And that process concentrates the lithium until it reaches a concentration of around 6%.
At that point, the concentrated solution gets moved by cistern trucks, which is a whole other environmental impact in itself.
For sure.
All the way to Albemarle's plant in Antofagasta, the La Negra complex, where it's chemically converted into usable forms like technical and battery-grade lithium carbonate.
And the environment where this is all happening is just profoundly fragile. The Salar de Atacama is an extreme desert. Our sources confirm it gets only about 15 millimeters of water per year.
15 millimeters, that's half an inch.
Half an inch. It is almost completely dependent on underground aquifers and whatever snowmelt makes it from the distant Andes.
So this is where that extreme environmental impact becomes unavoidable. Pumping the brine means you're pumping the water that carries it, and that heavily depletes the surrounding desert, the wetlands, the altiplano ecosystems.
And this depletion, it risks irreversible degradation of these habitats. We're not talking about minor changes here. We're talking about critical habitats for this stunning biodiversity.
Including 3 different types of flamingos?
Yes, and numerous migratory water birds, bats, foxes, lizards, various rodent species. These are all animals that have evolved to survive on these tiny margins of water, margins that the extraction process just erases.
The problem goes beyond just the wildlife, though. The loss of that water capacity, it degrades surface vegetation, it elevates daytime surface temperatures, and it drastically lowers soil moisture.
The whole system is already stressed to the max, and brine extraction just acts like a giant siphon.
And that environmental scarcity translates immediately into social and community conflict.
It has to. The small-scale subsistence farmers in San Pedro de Atacama, the surrounding indigenous communities, they've relied on the region's sparse surface and shallow groundwater for centuries.
And now they're facing immense pressure. Their crops are failing, their livestock are getting sick.
And it's all directly attributed to the lack of water caused by this large-scale brine extraction.
The resistance is becoming profoundly cultural, too. Our sources note that many houses in the San Pedro de Atacama area have raised black flags outside their homes.
Which is a traditional act of mourning.
Exactly. It's used here to protest and mourn the dramatic changes being made to their ancestral lands without their consent.
This is so much more than an environmental fight. It's a fight for cultural survival. One local from San Pedro de Atacama gave a really harrowing quote.
I saw that. It articulates the community's greatest fear.
He said, "We could very easily disappear." That's everybody's fear, I think, that we cease to exist, that we disappear entirely as a culture. The very foundation of their livelihood, water, is being extracted for a global economic transition.
And compounding this existential threat is the long-term plan of the Chilean government. They intend to expand lithium mining until the year 2060.
That's another 35 years of high-intensity extraction.
Facing an already terrified local population. I mean, that's a time frame that spans generations.
And the conflict, it eventually resulted in major legal action. In 2022, indigenous Atacameño people, joined by the Chilean state's powerful legal defense arm, the Consejo de Defensa del Estado.
They filed a lawsuit against Albemarle and other mining companies.
That's right. The suit alleged significant damages to the Monterrey Negriller Quilopozo aquifer.
This was a critical test case. Albemarle, for its part, asserted that its operation primarily drew surface water from a spring and that its usage was minimal compared to other entities operating there.
Right, that was their defense. But regardless of the individual strategies, the case signaled that these environmental liabilities in resource-scarce regions carry significant risk.
And it ended in a conciliation agreement in December 2024.
It did. Albemarle, along with the other companies, agreed to compensate for damages specifically to sensitive ecological zones, the meadows of Tilopozo and the lakes of La Punta and La Brava.
And importantly, they also agreed to provide broader economic, social, and environmental compensation to the indigenous community, the Comunidad de Pen.
So this is not just a fine. It's a direct financial consequence. It's an explicit acknowledgement of the environmental impact caused by their operations in this critical aquifer system.
This settlement has to suggest a rising cost of doing business in these fragile regions, a cost that has to eventually factor into their volatile financial calculations.
And the exact same extraction methodology is at play right here in the United States, which brings the conflict much closer to home.
Albemarle's Silver Peak site in Nevada.
It's highly significant. It remains the U.S.'s only active lithium resource site, and it's been operating for about 50 years.
And the paradox of water usage in this location is just stark, especially when you frame it against the national push for domestic supply chains.
It really is.
Yeah.
Nevada's confirmed as the driest state in America. It gets a meager 4.45 inches of precipitation annually. It is a true desert.
Yet, to sustain the operation at Silver Peak, Albemarle uses over 4 billion gallons of water per year.
4 billion. They're pumping ancient aquifers between 300 and 2,000 feet below the surface to get that lithium-rich brine.
And here we hit that green initiative paradox head on. The entire goal of federal subsidies is to drive the carbon transition, to secure domestic lithium.
Right.
Yet, our sources reveal that the same initiatives pushing for extraction impose few restrictions on mining practices and, critically, impose virtually no limits on water consumption for these companies.
It creates this massive contradictory oversight. I mean, if the goal is sustainability and climate mitigation, how can we possibly justify depleting the most precious non-renewable resource water in the driest area of the country?
The environmental cost is being entirely externalized.
It is, and that externalization translates directly into local resistance and environmental justice concerns, just like we saw in Chile.
Many local residents rely on those same water resources for traditional farming and cattle ranching. Depleting those reserves threatens to just erase their traditional way of life.
A county commissioner from the area, he summarized that feeling of injustice with a really powerful statement. He said, "The community needs the water. They don't need to take away from our area to be able to produce green energy. We should be able to survive."
It's a zero-sum conflict. Either the community survives or the lithium operation expands.
And the threat is equally dire for the unique native species of the area. Lithium mining operations in Nevada directly threaten over 2,000 acres of nesting sites.
And even more specifically, the mining is encroaching on the habitat of the federally protected Team's buckwheat wildflower.
That wildflower is not just any plant. It's a hyperendemic species. It exists nowhere else on Earth.
Wow.
and it evolved specifically to survive on the naturally inhospitable lithium-boron-rich soil that's found precisely where the mining is concentrated.
So it defines the unique, fragile ecosystem that the extraction process is now destroying.
The irony is unavoidable. The search for green energy is systematically destroying a unique, tough species that managed to thrive on lithium-rich land for millennia.
The common thread linking the Chilean Atacama and Silver Peak, Nevada, is this intense conflict over water, driven by the sheer volume required by brine evaporation, consistently overriding the needs of local people and native species.
We spent a lot of time on the challenges of brine extraction. So now let's pivot to the other side of the lithium equation, hard rock mining, and the legacy pollution issues Albemarle faces, specifically in the eastern United States.
This shift takes us from those expansive, fragile salt flats to the history and potential future of mining in North Carolina. Hard rock mining is generally seen as more straightforward, right?
Yeah, often more cost-effective. It avoids that multi-year solar evaporation process you need for the brine pools.
And Albemarle has significant plans to reopen a previously active mine at Kings Mountain, North Carolina.
This site is part of the Carolina Tin Spodumene Belt, and it's believed to contain one of the largest hard rock lithium resources on the planet.
So it's strategically vital for the U.S. domestic supply chain.
Incredibly so. But because this site was operated previously, from the 1950s through the 1980s before a lot of modern regulations, that legacy is a major problem.
That history has left behind elevated levels of pollutants that are uncommon in the environment and, crucially, are not federally regulated under current EPA statutes.
They're talking specifically about lithium itself, but also trace metals like cesium and rubidium. And the absence of federal regulation for these specific metals, particularly in drinking water standards, it raises a really serious public health concern.
Especially since reopening the mine and extracting more lithium will inevitably increase their presence in local water systems.
And these are not inert elements. Our sources indicate that cesium and rubidium can cause skin irritation, and if you ingest them in large quantities, they can become toxic.
So it highlights this critical oversight. We're rushing to restart these old mines built under different regulatory frameworks without modern safeguards for the specific, unique cocktail of contaminants they harbor.
And the adverse effects aren't some future projection. They're already manifesting during the prep work.
Right. In Cleveland County, near Kings Mountain, Albemarle began the process of draining the old mine to prepare for its reopening. And this procedure caused something called turnover.
So for the listener, turnover is when the surface water cools and sinks, and it displaces the stagnant, heavy, mineral-rich water that's been sitting at the bottom of that old pit for decades.
And when that bottom water gets displaced, it releases concentrated, decomposed materials from the historic lithium mining.
Notably hydrogen sulfide gas, directly into the air.
And the immediate impact is profoundly unpleasant. Locals are complaining about a foul, overwhelming odor.
There's a quote from a local resident detailing the severity. They said, "I've been around marshes and the beaches my whole life, all over, and never smelt the strength of this odor anywhere."
That's visceral, and it's happening just from the preparation phase.
Exactly. And just like in Chile and Nevada, we have to consider the local ecosystem. The Kings Mountain area is rich in biodiversity. It's home to 542 plant species, white-tailed deer, raptors, frogs, bats.
And mining threatens to pollute the air and water, degrade the soil, destroy habitats. The long-term cleanup and mitigation costs for this legacy pollution are an enormous shadow liability for Albemarle's future operations.
So moving from these localized, site-specific environmental issues, we have to address the global compliance record. Because our sources reveal that Albemarle's aggressive, decades-long global growth strategy has been shadowed by some severe legal and ethical setbacks.
And this is where we see the internalized costs of that aggressive expansion. The most significant revelation concerns a violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the FCPA.
Yes. In September 2023, Albemarle settled with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. They agreed to pay over $103.6 million for violating anti-bribery, record-keeping, and internal accounting controls provisions of the FCPA.
We really need to analyze this misconduct because it was systemic. It wasn't an isolated incident.
Not at all. The violations spanned nearly a decade. From at least 2009 through 2017, Albemarle used agents to pay bribes primarily to obtain sales of their refinery catalysts.
Those same essential chemicals we detailed at the beginning?
The very same. They were trying to secure sales to public sector oil refineries in Vietnam, India, and Indonesia. And they also targeted private sector refineries in India.
That is nearly 9 years of paying bribes to secure essential sales in their foundational catalyst business across multiple key emerging markets.
And the SEC investigation highlighted that the core problem was a failure of internal controls.
A massive failure.
Absolutely. The company failed to maintain a sufficient system of internal accounting controls to ensure that payments made to agents in Vietnam, Indonesia, India, China, and the United Arab Emirates were for legitimate services rather than, payoffs.
There's a quote from the chief of the SEC's enforcement division that's a devastating indictment of the corporate culture.
I saw that one.
He noted that Albemarle failed for many years to implement sufficient internal accounting controls, saying this happened despite repeated and glaring bribery-related red flags.
That phrase, glaring red flags, suggests either a conscious or just a negligent choice to ignore warnings in pursuit of global sales growth and market dominance.
And the Department of Justice was also involved.
They were. Albemarle entered into a non-prosecution agreement. They agreed to pay a criminal fine of $99 million and a forfeiture of approximately $98 million.
So when you combine that with the SEC settlement, we're talking about a cumulative penalty approaching $200 million.
It's a huge number. And the key legal point is that Albemarle consented to this payment. They did not deny that these violations had been committed.
That staggering sum, $200 million in combined fines, has to be viewed in the context of the $1.2 billion net income loss they reported in 2024.
Right. These massive high-stakes financial penalties are the direct internalized costs of that rapid, high-risk global expansion.
And that's just the ethical bribery side of it. When we look at their environmental compliance record with the EPA, the pattern is one of consistent operational negligence.
It is. Since the year 2000, Albemarle has paid over $1 million. Specifically, 1,037,728 Tausers for 27 different environment-related violations with the EPA.
What's most telling is the sheer variety of the infractions. It suggests a pervasive weakness in compliance across their industrial sites.
I agree. They've been fined for breaches of the National Emission Standard for hazardous air pollutants, specific inventory update violations, issues related to the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act,
And Clean Air Act violations concerning ozone protection, plus violations related to federal regulations on pesticides and fungicides.
and the list just keeps going. Direct damages related to water quality, air quality, improper disposal of hazardous waste, and internal workplace safety concerns.
This pattern really suggests that while the company was constantly transforming and restructuring its portfolio to chase this lithium growth,
Its foundational systems for ethical dealing and environmental compliance were just unable to keep pace with its expanding operational reach and complexity.
so this compliance record isn't just a footnote. It's a liability that casts a long shadow over their global ambitions. It confirms that the high-risk, high-reward strategy they applied to lithium acquisition was also applied detrimentally to their internal, ethical, and environmental controls.
So we've taken a really exhaustive deep dive into Albemarle Corporation. We started with their robust, stable foundation in specialty chemicals and refining catalysts, that reliable cash flow, and we traced their aggressive, high-stakes pivot toward lithium dominance.
And what we've synthesized is this central tension defining the company and, frankly, the entire energy transition. There is immense global pressure on Albemarle to deliver these critical materials for a clean future.
But that pressure is conflicting directly with localized resource scarcity, that intense zero-sum conflict over water in the Atacama in Nevada.
And the legacy costs of ethical and environmental negligence, highlighted by that $200 million in bribery fines and the unregulated pollution risks in North Carolina.
And that continuous stream of legal and regulatory settlements we detailed, the 9-figure FCPA resolution, the Chilean Aquifer Compensation Agreement, the dozens of EPA fines, they're not just anomalies.
No, they collectively suggest a pattern.
A pattern where the financial burden of aggressive growth is being internalized through penalties, while the environmental and social costs are often externalized onto these fragile local populations.
So what does this all mean for you, the person driving the electric vehicle or relying on a cleaner grid? If Albemarle is a proxy for the entire critical minerals supply chain, our sources show that the path to a green future is paved with some significant social and environmental compromises that are impacting communities and ecosystems right now.
The transition to clean energy demands resources that are extracted using processes that impose these enormous immediate costs on those living closest to the mines.
The analysis really forces us to ask, are we simply trading one set of environmental and ethical compromises like fossil fuels for another set with critical mineral extraction?
That's a tough question.
That brings us to our final provocative thought, one that really lingers after reviewing those Chilean sources. The Chilean government plans to expand lithium extraction in the Atacama until the year 2060.
Right.
Given the local voiced fears of cultural extinction due to water scarcity, how will the rising global demand for electric vehicles and battery storage reconcile with the needs of the communities living directly on top of these essential yet incredibly fragile resources over the next 35 years?
The environmental liability of the future is being decided in the deserts and in the regulatory failures of today. The cost of green energy is, it seems, still being calculated.
A truly challenging thought to end on. That was the deep dive into Albemarle Corporation. We hope you feel far more informed and maybe a lot more curious about the true layered cost of those batteries powering the modern world. We'll see you next time.